AMD reported quarterly financial results that are sending shares higher by 3% in the day after the earnings announcement. Overall, AMD stock is up over 113% year to date in 2025. And of course, I'm happy about that because I've had AMD stock rated as a buy all year long. In fact, I started off the year rating AMD as one of the best stocks you could buy. So I'm happy to see the company performing so well here. But what do I think about the company now after these earnings results are out, after the stock price has soared? Do I still think it's attractive at these higher prices? I'll answer that question in this video, and I'll review the company's latest quarterly results, highlight the biggest things that you need to know about the company's earnings release, and what it could mean for AMD stock investors, both in the near term and longer term.
I want to thank the Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. Visit fool.com/parkev for the 10 best stocks to buy now.
AMD's management team said they delivered an outstanding quarter with record revenue and profitability, reflecting broad-based demand for high-performance EPYC and Ryzen processors and Instinct AI accelerators. And the second part is more important here for AMD stock investors. AMD's latest generation Instinct AI accelerators that are going into these data centers optimized for AI are finally gaining traction. The company signed huge deals with Oracle and OpenAI for billions of dollars worth of these new AI accelerators. We've been waiting for an alternative to NVIDIA's accelerators, NVIDIA boasting over 90% estimated market share in this data centers optimized for AI market. And everyone, including the large hyperscalers, were hoping there would be a strong alternative available for purchasers. AMD now is clearly that second place player, and AMD over the previous decade and more has been a good second place company. First, it was second place to NVIDIA's gaming computers, right? The gaming GPUs. Then it was second place to Intel's CPUs, and it made great inroads against leaders in those categories. And I believe it's overtaken Intel in the CPU market for personal computers. I could be mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, but regardless, they've made great inroads against Intel in the PC market. They've made great inroads against NVIDIA in the PC gaming market, and now they're starting to make inroads against NVIDIA in the data centers optimized for AI market. And I say starting because it is very early for AMD in this market. Now, they will get opportunities from these large buyers because they want a second place performer so that they can at least negotiate against NVIDIA and say, look, NVIDIA, if you increase prices on us too much, we'll give more sales to AMD. For only that reason, if that's the only reason, AMD will gain meaningful market share in this market. As long as they can be a viable second place, they will have a good opportunity in this market. And that's all they need to do, really, it's theirs to lose. And so I'm glad to see they're making good progress on this regard. So they highlight that they're making a clear step up in their growth trajectory as their expanding compute franchise and rapidly scaling data center AI business drive significant revenue and earnings growth. They go on to say their continued investments in AI and high-performance computing are driving significant growth and position AMD to deliver long-term value creation. And it's true, revenue increased by 36% year over year to $9.25 billion, up from $6.8 billion in the same quarter last year. The gross profit margin expanded from 50% up to 52%. To put that into context, NVIDIA is generating close to 75% gross profit margin. AMD at 52% is well behind NVIDIA's gross profit margins. Its operating profit increased to $1.27 billion, up from $724 million, and that was up 75%. Its operating margin at 14% increased from 11%. And again, to put this figure into context, NVIDIA is generating operating profit margins closer to 60%. So AMD's data center segment revenue was $4.3 billion, and that was up 22% year over year. primarily driven by its AMD EPYC processors and AMD Instinct MI350 series GPUs. And they already have the next generation 400 series GPUs ready to come out next year. And they've already made large deals with OpenAI and Oracle for these next generation GPUs. Client and gaming segment revenue at $4 billion was up 73%. Client revenue specifically was a record $2.8 billion, up 46%. And gaming revenue at $1.3 billion was up 181%, driven by higher semi-custom revenue and strong demand for Radeon gaming GPUs. We're about getting ready for the next generation of gaming consoles from the major players, Sony and Microsoft. The Sony PlayStation 5 is getting long in the tooth now. I believe this is now its 5th year out, and usually they come out with a new version every 7 to 10 years or so, depending on the available technology. They might want to push up the newer version of this gaming console or push back, depending on the macroeconomic factors. I mentioned those big deals with OpenAI and Oracle for the next generation 400 series GPUs, the 450. And this is a strong confidence indicator for AMD. These companies are signing agreements with AMD before the 400 series is even released. The early testing must have been strong enough to give these companies confidence to order large quantities of these GPUs starting next year. For the fourth quarter, AMD expects revenue of about $9.6 billion, and at the midpoint of their revenue range, it would represent about 25% year-over-year growth and sequential growth of about 4%. Their gross profit margins are expected to increase slightly to 54.5%, and this outlook doesn't include any revenue expected from China, which the companies in the United States face significant export restrictions to the Chinese market. NVIDIA as well as AMD are trying to work with the U.S. administration to gain approvals to export these products to China, and it's part of the negotiations between the United States and China to bring down some of the trade barriers that have increased significantly this year. In more good news for AMD stock investors, their cash flow from operations almost tripled to $1.8 billion, up from $628 million in the same 3-month period last year. For the 9 months ended September 27th, their cash flow from operations more than doubled to $4.2 billion, up from $1.7 billion. So AMD is gaining significant traction here, finally getting the benefits of those investments in research and development to create products for the data centers optimized for artificial intelligence. They've really been the only company able to provide that alternative to NVIDIA. These hyperscalers have their own versions. Amazon has the Trainium chip. That's an accelerator that Anthropic is using more and more. Microsoft, Alphabet are developing their own chips as well, trying to have an alternative to NVIDIA. But outside of the hyperscalers, AMD is the only one that's come up with a product that competes against NVIDIA. Intel has so far failed to launch a product that is a viable competitor. Intel stock investors are hoping that it too can join this game here of this rapidly growing market in the accelerators for data centers. So I mentioned that AMD stock is soaring here in 2025, and so is the valuation. AMD is now trading at a forward price to earnings of 51.4, which is near the highest this stock has traded for, save for a brief moment in 2024 where the valuation increased all the way up to over 60. Besides that brief moment, this is probably the most expensive this stock has traded for, according to this valuation metric, going back several years. Furthermore, when I look at my proprietary discounted cash flow valuation model, which I updated today, I did increase the free cash flow expectations for AMD starting in 2027 by about $1 billion annually, and I forecast that going forward, and that did increase the intrinsic value per share to $194, but still compared with the current market price of $258, AMD stock is looking more and more overvalued at this point. So to update my recommendation for AMD stock, I've had this stock rated as a buy all year. I had it rated as a buy in 2024 and 2023, but now that the price has increased by so much, I think the valuation has gotten ahead of itself, and I'm downgrading AMD stock to a hold today, November 5th, 2025. By the way, did you know about our exciting channel membership program? You get so much for less than $5 a month, including dozens of exclusive videos, access to exclusive research on over 100 stocks, and early access to many of my videos before everyone else sees them. Click that join button below to learn what this program is all about.